The night the billionaire caught the single dad, Janitor, doing the unthinkable began like any other cold hallways. Flickering lights and a silence so heavy it felt like it was pressing against the windows of the towering corporate building. But what happened inside the executive suite at 2:13 a.m. would shock the man, who owned half the city and forever changed the life of the man sweeping its floors. Because that night, when billionaire Adrian Lockwood pushed open the door to his private office, he froze not from fear, but from disbelief as he found the janitor, Daniel Reyes, on his knees, trembling, holding something that no one expected to see in that place, at that hour, or in the hands of a man society had tried so hard to forget. Asterisk. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us of our shared humanity, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Stories to support the channel and help more people find these emotional stories. Asterisk. The story began months before that unforgettable night, long before Daniel Reyes ever set foot in that office. He had once lived a life that felt stable enough, at least by his modest standards. He had a decent job at a small mechanical shop, a small rented house in a quiet neighborhood, and the most precious thing in the world, his 7-year-old daughter, Lily. They were inseparable, moving through life like two halves of the same heartbeat. But life has a cruel way of knocking down those who are already on their knees, and Daniel learned this when the shop shut down without warning, the owner leaving without paying final salaries. 2 months later, the landlord handed him an eviction notice. With no savings, no help, and no family to fall back on, Daniel suddenly found himself both unemployed and homeless, with a little girl depending on him for everything he could no longer provide. Asterisk. Desperation pushed him toward the night shift janitorial job at Lockwood Holdings, a massive corporation run by Adrian Lockwood, a billionaire known for his ruthlessness, efficiency, and cold approach to business. Daniel applied even though he lacked experience, and by a stroke of luck or perhaps fate, the company needed temporary cleaning staff for night shifts. The pay was low, but it was steady, and it was the lifeline Daniel needed to keep Lily fed. But even with the job, Daniel and Lily lived out of his aging car, parking in different lots each night, hoping not to draw attention. He worked through the night and stayed awake during the day, watching over her as she slept in the back seat, too afraid to leave her anywhere alone. The exhaustion crept into his bones like frost, but he kept going because giving up was not an option. Asterisk. Every night as he cleaned the massive floors, polished windows, and emptied trash bins, he quietly prayed no one would find out he was homeless. He knew that if the management discovered his situation, they might see him as unstable and a liability. Keeping his job was his only hope, and he clung to it with everything he had. Asterisk. Daniel's quiet world collided with fate the night Lily fell sick. She woke up trembling, her forehead burning with fever, and her breathing shallow. He panicked, but had no money for a clinic. His heart broke as he placed his only clean towel on her forehead and whispered reassurances he wasn't sure he believed. He needed help, but help was the one thing he feared seeking. If anyone found out he was keeping her hidden in the car while he worked nights, everything would collapse. Asterisk. That night, unable to leave her alone in the freezing car, he made a decision that would change his life forever. He wrapped Lily in his jacket, carried her inside the building after midnight, and hid her inside the one place he felt was safe from cameras and supervisors, the top-floor executive office area that was rarely visited at night. He knew it was wrong. He knew he could be fired instantly if caught. But he also knew that a father does the unthinkable when his child needs saving. Asterisk. He placed her gently on the soft carpet of the main executive lounge, where the polished floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the moonlight. She whimpered softly, and he held her hand, whispering that everything would be okay, even though his own voice trembled. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to cry silent tears that fell onto her tiny fingers as he prayed for her fever to break. Asterisk. But then, in the middle of the night, as he tried to cool her forehead with water from the bathroom sink, the door behind him swung open with a heavy thud, and the sound echoed like thunder through the empty office. When Daniel turned round, his heart collapsed. Asterisk. There, standing in a tailored coat, eyes sharp as steel, was Adrian Lockwood himself. Asterisk. The billionaire stared at him for a moment, confusion shifting quickly into shock as he uttered the words that would mark the turning point of everything. "What are you doing here?" Asterisk. Daniel froze, throat closing, stomach dropping, knowing he was about to lose everything. But what frightened him most wasn't the billionaire's presence, it was the realization that he had no backup plan. Nowhere else to take Lily, nothing else to hold on to. His daughter let out a weak cough behind him, and Adrian's eyes darted past Daniel to the small bundle on the floor. His expression changed instantly, no longer sharp and cold, but startled, unsure, almost human. Asterisk. Daniel tried to speak, but no words came out. Instead, he reached down and lifted Lily slightly so Adrian could see her flushed face and trembling lips. And in that quiet moment, everything about the scene, the uniform, the child, the janitor kneeling in the billionaire's carpeted hallway clashed with the image Adrian had always believed represented his empire. Asterisk. Adrian's voice lowered as he stepped forward slowly. He noticed how Daniel shielded Lily instinctively, like a cornered parent protecting the last piece of hope he had. There was no theft, no vandalism, no wrongdoing, only fear, love, and desperation in its rawest form. Asterisk. In that moment, something inside Adrian seemed to shift. He had built his empire on numbers and logic, but here was a truth that couldn't be measured. A father willing to risk everything for his child. Adrian motioned him to stand, and when Daniel couldn't find the strength, Adrian placed a hand under his arm and helped him up, a gesture so foreign to the billionaire that even he looked surprised by his own action. Asterisk. What followed was an unexpected unfolding of vulnerability. Daniel, unable to hold back anymore, explained everything: the lost job, the eviction, the nights in the car, the constant fear, and Lily's sudden fever. Every word felt like stepping through fire, but the weight of holding it all in had become unbearable. Adrian listened silently, jaw tight, eyes dark, but something in them softened the more Daniel spoke. The billionaire who had built skyscrapers now stood face to face with a truth he'd never considered. That greatness wasn't measured by wealth, but by what you were willing to sacrifice for those you loved. Asterisk. Adrian instructed Daniel to bring Lily with him, guiding them to the private infirmary room meant for company emergencies. It was small but warm, with a comfortable bed and medical supplies. Daniel watched as the billionaire, who could have walked away, instead knelt beside Lily, checking her temperature with the back of his hand. The contrast was surreal. Man worth billions, showing tenderness to a janitor's child he'd met minutes earlier. Asterisk. Over the next hour, Lily slept while Adrian arranged for a trusted pediatrician to come in, despite the late hour. Daniel couldn't grasp why this powerful man was helping him, but he didn't have the strength to question it. When the doctor finished examining Lily, he assured Daniel that she would recover with rest and proper care. Adrian insisted on arranging a hotel room for them, but Daniel resisted, ashamed of taking more than he deserved. Adrian simply reminded him that pride had no place when a child's well-being was on the line. As days passed, Adrian checked in often. Something about Daniel's story had struck a place in his heart he thought had long been sealed. He had grown up watching his own father treat employees like numbers, and he had inherited that mindset until he saw Daniel, who reminded him of everything his father lacked: kindness, sacrifice, humanity. The company soon learned of the story, not through gossip, but because Adrian himself made a decision that shocked everyone. He called Daniel to his office and offered him a new position, not as a janitor, but as a facility supervisor in training, with better pay, housing assistance, and the stability he desperately needed. Daniel broke down, overwhelmed by a mercy he had never expected from a man like Adrian. But Adrian didn't stop there. He quietly arranged for Lily's school enrollment and covered her first-year tuition anonymously. Daniel suspected, but Adrian never confirmed it. The billionaire's transformation didn't come from charity or ego. It came from realizing that one moment of compassion could alter the course of someone's entire life. Months passed, and Daniel's life changed completely. He rented a small apartment with real beds and warm lighting. Lily thrived in school. Her laughter no longer weighed down by nights spent shivering in a car. Daniel excelled in his new position, gaining respect from the staff who once walked past him without noticing his existence. Adrian visited sometimes, not as a boss checking on an employee, but as a friend checking on a family that had unknowingly healed something inside him. And every time Daniel looked at Lily, healthy and smiling, he remembered the night he had been caught doing the unthinkable. Not a crime, not an act of rebellion, but something far more powerful: a father risking everything for love. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Stories so more people can experience stories of hope, redemption, and second chances.